In love and light, I greet you, beloved Star Walkers. Welcome to today's video. We are going to talk about how to prepare for Libra season, coming up September 23rd to October 22nd. I invite you to like this video and subscribe to my channel to get most up-to-date videos. And liking helps to spread these messages to others in the YouTube ethers, so I would be very grateful. The symbol of Libra is a scale, and oftentimes when you see a symbol related to justice, see a figure blindfolded holding the scale. When we measure, weigh something, we have to use a certain standard of measurement. For example, my astrology teacher, Achyuta Bhavad, brought up the myth of the Egyptian underworld, Maat. And when an Egyptian passed, the soul would travel to the underworld and his heart would be measured against a feather on a scale. And what's really interesting about that myth is that a feather couldn't possibly outweigh a heart in the three-dimensional world. But the lesson is that you're using a different set of measurements of morality, ethics, lightness, to see if the soul is worthy to journey to the underworld. As we prepare for Libra season, that's when the darkness, the winter, starts to take over. And studying Hellenistic astrology, you see that there's a philosophy, the cycles and rhythms between light and darkness. In the spring, we have the sun rising up in the horizon, reaching its highest point in the sky in the summer solstice, and then going back down, lower in the horizon as we enter the winter season. This rhythm and polarity between light and dark is a very deep philosophy that is present in human psyche. For example, you have the symbol yin and the yang. And what most people don't realize is that symbol is one of constant motion. And it's not a static symbol. And within the light, there is darkness. And within darkness, there is light. So no matter what polarity you get into, it's all one. And even though it seems the light or darkness is predominant, just like winter as we're entering into the fall and winter season, there's still the polarity of light, of hope, of spirit. So as we enter the fall, how can we start to cultivate your inner hearth, your inner light, so that when you're in the yang principle in the wintertime, you have something, hearth within you, within your inner temple. How can you prepare for Libra season? We're facing a lot of change and transition collectively. And deep shadows, whether that's personal or collective, is coming up for healing as we shine the light. And right now is a great time to really observe your habit patterns, especially any shadows. For example, one thing I'm working on is to cut back on drinking. And I realized that since my teens, I used drinking as a coping mechanism to numb myself. And there are certain points where I feel like I'll drink in excess And then I realized that I just want my mind to be silent, to be still, to forget. So I could achieve that same result through meditation. So it's not easy loosening a habit. Oftentimes you have to replace it with a different habit, a more positive habit, hopefully. But it's possible. And it takes time. I'm realizing that some changes I want to make, for example, rising up early, following the sunrise to do a solar meditation, it takes multiple attempts. I'm going on weeks now, and this is the first sunrise in this week, so it's a work in progress. And it's really important to be self-compassionate towards yourself as you're trying to make these changes happen in your life. Let's talk about the pandemic. With the Delta and Lambda variant on the rise, I've been feeling a lot of fear watching the news a lot more, and realizing that COVID is here to stay, and in the fall and winter, we're going to have to face a lot of uncertainty. And what I realize is that when there are shadows or things, emotions, feelings that you've suppressed, when you don't acknowledge and integrate those feelings, they tend to come out when you're triggered by a situation or feel reactive towards a situation. And before we get into wintertime, and being based in New York, one of the toughest seasons of the year, give yourself spaciousness to really process any emotions, any events, grief from this past year and a half, because collectively we've been through a lot. I will start the school year in the fall as a teacher, and I came down to Miami to really give myself a month to process, to convalesce. And what I notice is that when I'm relaxed for extended period of time, things will come up emotionally that I've suppressed or put aside in order to survive. Sometimes when we're in the mix, constant on the go of the three-dimensional world, you consciously have to put things aside in order to work, survive, take care of your children, family, etc. And I've been watching this video with Gabor Mate, one of my heroes who studies the relationship between trauma and addiction, and how unprocessed trauma can really live out in people's lives, take over people's lives. So he showed this clip of a polar bear being tranquilized so that it could be tagged. And after it was tranquilized, the polar bear went through these violent shakes to burn off the adrenaline and whatever else is coursing through its body. And after shaking violently for about 4 or 5 minutes, it got up and it was back to normal. He describes this process of how the body is integral to the healing of trauma. And there's the book, classic, The Body Keeps Score. And through deep therapy and also community, learning about trauma, learning about these signs in the process of healing, I'm at the phase now where I realize that my body, remember, when you're numb, you numb the body because that's where pain, memory is often stored. So I've been learning to integrate the body into my healing. I'll share 2 stories of the shakes coming out in my life. And the term getting the shakes you're feeling shaky happens when something traumatic happens to you. It's a natural reaction to releasing that energy out of your body. So the first event I remember was when I was in Germany for the Christmas holiday, and I was doing something that reminded me, threw me back towards a previous traumatic event. And I got really sad and blue when I started crying. I was with someone else, so it was kind of awkward. I didn't want to ruin the holiday mood. But I realized that being relaxed and the mind not controlling things gave space for feelings to arise. Another example was when I was at the doctor's just getting a checkup, and he went to a certain area of my body, and it was as if this energy had a life of its own, just came up, and I started shaking and I started crying. And that sensation really caught me off guard. And I knew exactly where that trauma was from, especially because the relation locally, which I found really interesting. I'll give a third example. That happened in this trip. So I've been reorganizing, navigating relationships. And as you get into your 30s, not for everyone, but your friends dynamic really changes. Some friends stay in your life, strengthen in your life, and some relationships fall away. So working on this one relationship with someone that I love dearly. And after sort of clearing the air and really expressing what I wanted to express finally, this person deals with addiction, and I didn't realize how fearful and worried I've been for that person's life. And I remember in 2011 when I first did my teacher training, and first instance of this came up when my friend ran away. And in order to survive, I had to really don't think I did a good job. I was a hot mess. I tried to put feelings aside and just focus on working. And 10 years later, these emotions that are unprocessed, and it's not just from 2011, I think it's throughout, my fear and anxiety, and I interpret it as care for the other person, really came up. Just because you ignore emotions, suppress emotions, doesn't mean it goes away. And they're stored in the body. So in preparation for a Libra season, the winter season, the taking over of the dark in our season, looking at the shadow of the collective with the pandemic, racial equity, all the changes happening in every structure of our society, education, finance, and a lot of women's rights issues, sexual harassment, even with Governor Cuomo. All the darkness that was there is coming up for healing. So instead of being reactive and triggered, because these suppressed emotions dictate your life. whether you like it or not. On this trip, I've been noticing fear and anxiety about going out in public, and that's been something I've been working on. I know it's from being assaulted and with the Asian hate crimes. It's in the back of my mind. And so whenever I'm a minority, and in Florida, there aren't a lot of Asian people, I get very nervous. I just have to be alert. But everyone's friendly here and wonderful, so I've been having a great time. But anyways, in this month of giving myself spaciousness, I had a good couple of cries. And remember, that's a form of getting the shakes. Some people hate crying because they feel like they feel weak, or they feel that they don't have a right to be upset because of everything going else around your community, the world. But give yourself space. Because after I had a cry, I realized that I was avoiding going out at night, which is fine. I came here to just rest anyways. But the next day, I realized that I was able to go out. And I went out and I looked at the stars. And I was so grateful. I felt something released that was really preventing me from living out my life. So in preparation for Libra season, as much as you can, you may not have a whole month. You could dedicate time in the morning, in the evening, just to give yourself space. Just to give yourself space to be. A lot of times when you go for an extended meditation, that extended space of just being, not thinking, allows emotions, feelings to arise so that you can actually deal with them. And when you deal with your pain and trauma, it takes great courage because you, in a sense, are re-traumatized going through those events again, looking at those events, feeling those feelings especially. I'm a big advocate for therapy, and the collective is more accepting towards therapy now. One thing you can do to really help increase your wellness is to, if you don't have a therapist already, is to plan, look for someone, a professional, to help you process any emotions, because you're not alone, and processing things on your own or with someone can traumatize you more, I found for myself. So take this preventative measure so that once you're in the deep of winter, you're not floundering looking for support, but you've planted the seed, and it's like you packed away your harvest for the winter time so that you can survive emotionally, spiritually. Another thing that I've been working on to prepare for the winter is to really look at my appetites, my drives, my habit patterns throughout the day. Not only do I see these patterns, these coping mechanisms really, they form because of my suppressed trauma. Also, I realized that as we enter different stages of our lives, things that we once were interested in, once served us, no longer serves us. And your priorities get very different as you get older. And that's okay, it's very natural. For example, in my 20s, I used to party, just treat this poor body with abandon. And now, not only does that not resonate with my body anymore, but I realize that there are real barriers to me striving for things that I actually want in my life. Right now is a really good time to really observe your habits, your patterns. And you could blue ocean your life, feng shui your life. What can you keep in your life that is working for you, supports your wellness, joy, happiness? What things need to fall away, or do you need to consciously release Or what can you reinterpret in your life to use in a more functional way to serve your wellness? I've been really working on my morning routine, and I've been training myself to wake up, to follow the sunrise and follow the sunset, to practice a solar meditation. If I'm up at night drinking, partying, there's no way I'm going to meet the morning AM meditation. So it's really about, one, realizing that that habit is impacting my desires in a negative way, and really noticing, because if I'm on autopilot or coping with things of the world, I'm just reaching for another drink. If I'm feeling emotional or sad, tough day, reach for a drink. But I really am turning that habit into meditating more, because I still get that stillness, peacefulness. Financially, just giving myself space to observe my spending patterns even. I love to shop. I'm a huge thrifter and I love vintage. And I've been realizing that I spend a lot of time thrifting, shopping, researching things that I might want to buy. And after observing that, I realize I just don't want to do that anymore. I want to save, buy a house abroad, hopefully, and it's just not my priority anymore. Finally, reassessing relationships. People change as they get older, and especially in your 20s, I feel like you're trying to figure out what you want in life, so it's really fun to explore that with others. However, in your 30s, you get a clearer sense of what you want. I've gotten clarity through journaling, doing this value exercise, which I love, from my mindfulness program. It's when you list 5 people you admire. You list characteristics that you admire about that person. The characteristics you admire is something you want to integrate into your life. And by also getting in touch with the body, the portal to the heart, I was able to really get in tune with what I am attracted to, what's in my heart's desire. And that allows me to take action steps that are more aligned with those clear desires, instead of being on autopilot or doing things based on my past conditioning. When you change the dynamic of a relationship, not be the center of your life, it can sometimes feel like a betrayal to your childhood. And I grew up in a place where it was a low-income neighborhood in PG County, Maryland. And I hear some friends talk about how, like, being from the streets, being from the hood, like, you don't want to sell out. And what that really is the ego's fear of losing its own identity. I felt that way at my school in Harlem. 2 things. I realized that I was replicating a situation from my childhood, and the environment was very similar, and I realized that it was an unconscious attempt for me to save my inner child. And I've been really watching this savior complex in me, and I realize it's I think in my childhood I felt so helpless that I really wanted someone to come liberate me. And so a subconscious projection of myself. It took me a while to leave that school. It became very toxic. But I felt two things. One is that if I left this school, I was saying goodbye to a familiar environment, my childhood, forever. And it took me a while to really let that go and move on to the next stage of my journey. Another thing was that I feared not being a teacher anymore because I was so identified with that role. I felt my ego was so terrified to let that go. So ask yourself, in preparation for Libra seasons, what are some things that you want to let go of? Libra also represents harvest. Look at your harvest. What are the things that bear fruit in your life? Keep those seeds, keep that crop. And what seeds did not? Going back to the Maat Egyptian mythology, Libra is all about using a different measurement, different standard, different code to measure something. So in your own life, how can you reinterpret your standard of success, happiness, wellness, and keep the things that contribute to that vision? And how can you reinterpret things to align your life to that vision better, or to get rid of the fruit that did not bear what you wanted? I'm going to end by talking about the philosophy of light and darkness once more. Within the polarity and rhythm of light and darkness, like the yin and yang, those two counterparts are always in motion. When things are always in motion, the only thing constant in life is change itself. Everything is transient. Coming to Miami, being in a subtropical or tropical climate, it's very fecund, it's very humid, and the humidity adds to, there's a starker energy of decay in the vegetation, in the marina. It's sort of like there are certain aspects of the vegetation which reminds me of Heart of Darkness. There's a saying, everything is rot, rot, rot. And nothing in this world lasts forever, I'm realizing. I remember when my parents bought a house. After years go by, it's not new anymore. Things break down, things fall apart. You get a new car, after years, it's an old car. And that's what makes this life so beautiful. You can't perceive beauty without duality, polarities interacting with one another. And I often find that the further the polarity is out, further the opposites are reconciled, the more beautiful something is. So that's been a working theory. I had a beautiful dream from my higher self. I have a ring, and in the dream, I had the ring on, but the pearl was rotted and melted away. And I knew that my subconscious, my higher self, was communicating that I can continue to expend energy on things that will not last, or I can spend energy on legacy, spirituality, things that are eternal. You need both. It's a balance between both. That doesn't mean I can just ignore all my physical needs and desires. But I took that dream and I wanted to reevaluate and really have a clear eye to see what am I expending energy on that will not reap fruit? What will ultimately rot away through time? And that's a great journey that we're on. There's the aphorism, we're not physical beings, we're spiritual beings having a physical experience. And that's half the story. There's this beautiful painting that I saw in someone's collection. And it's like a line of perspective with the light. It struck me because it was yet another symbol from the soul's journey, from light to darkness and darkness back to light. And when you study the philosophy of the Kabbalah, the tree of life, even with tarot, you have the aces and then you have the tens, the bottom of the tree of life, which bears fruit. So how can you integrate with the rhythms of life? Studying astrology has been so beneficial to me in bringing in natural rhythms of nature. And if you're like me, a city dweller, I can't always escape to nature. So I use the cycles of the heavenly bodies, like the moon cycle, planning projects along to the moon phase, really evaluating and giving myself spaciousness to observe my desires and feelings during the full moon, starting new projects on the new moon, following the sun for solar meditations. These are ways that we can integrate natural rhythms into our lives. So, I hope this video is helpful for you all and planted some seeds that will help you keep your light shining bright. Imagine the yin within the yang. How can you nourish your inner hearth? How can you light the fire of your inner temple daily, but also for the long stretch of the dark season taking over? And don't forget, I invite you to subscribe to my channel, like the video to help get this message across in the YouTube ethers. I will be very grateful. And until next time, blessings to you all. Be well. I've been contemplating this idea of I had to move because these people are right in my shot. What is this? Mindfulness practice, motherfuckers.